Thank you to our young professional hotelier panelists for joining us and offering their perspectives on what is driving the future of the industry and the opportunities they see emerging from this crisis. Our government continues to play an influential role in helping small business owners address the economic impact of this pandemic. But while Washington gets much of the credit or the blame, our state association partners are hard at work. They make sure that their state and local governments understand what hotel owners need from them to make it through this crisis. From property tax deferments without penalty to navigating the many economic assistance programs, our state association partners are helping hoteliers make their voices heard on issues that will help them save money and get the assistance they need. Here to talk about state advocacy and its impact on the hotel industry, please welcome Carol Dover, President and CEO of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, John Longstreet, President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, Michael Jacobson, President and CEO of the Illinois Hotel and Lodging Association, and our moderator, AAHOA Vice Chair, Vinay Patel. Thank you.
Welcome to AAHOACON20. I'm Vinay Patel, AAHOA Vice Chair and President and CEO of Fairbrook Hotels based in Chantilly, Virginia. I also serve on the Virginia Restaurant and Lodging Association. I know we wish we were all together in Orlando today. However, this approach might be the new norm for the near term. In many ways, the lodging industry is a great barometer in any economic crisis. We were the first to fall when meetings and gatherings were canceled, and as the stay-at-home orders and travel restrictions took hold, most projections show that we'll be the last to recover from this crisis. There is reason for optimism, however. We are a resilient industry, and we have tremendous leaders who have seen us through many challenges. We have several of these leaders here today. Joining us here are industry experts who will discuss how state governments are approaching the economic challenges resulting from COVID-19 and how our industry will overcome them. So I'd like to start off by welcoming Carol Dover, President and CEO of the FRLA. Carol is the CEO of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association since 1995. In that role, Carol manages a 10,000-member association and leads a lobbying effort in a state whose foremost industry is travel and tourism, and sets the trend for the rest of the country. Previously, Carol served as the Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Bob Martinez, leadership roles in various state agencies, and the head of Florida Outdoor Advertising Association. Carol works to protect, educate, and promote the diverse interests of Florida's hospitality industry before the Florida legislature, and lobbying against unfair government regulations. Carol has been a longtime friend of AAHOA. Her personal and continued outreach on the inclusion of AAHOA members, including at the highest levels of Florida government, has helped us to ensure our members are well represented in Tallahassee. Now, I'd also like to welcome Michael Jacobson, President and CEO of the AAHLA. Michael Jacobson serves as the President and CEO of the Illinois Hotel and Lodging Association, the voice of lodging in Illinois. Michael has raised the profile of the industry and the association since taking helm in 2018. He has garnered significant political influences for the organization with leadership throughout the state. Some key legislative victories include increasing lodging per diems for state employees, balanced labor rules, and providing flexibility for employers and working to prevent human trafficking. Previously, Michael served as the Senior Director of the Political Engagement of the U.S. Travel Association. In his first act as CEO of ILHA, Michael reached out to AAHOA and built an exceptional relationship with both our national association and specifically our local AAHOA members. Now, I also like to welcome John Longstreet, President of the PRLA and CEO. John Longstreet, who is the President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. The PRLA represents Pennsylvania's 25,000 restaurants and 14,000 hotels. Prior to taking the helm of the PRLA, John served as the President and CEO of Quaker Steak and Lube restaurant chain, Executive Vice President of Club Corps USA, and Senior Vice President of Burston Hotels, the largest ownership group of IHG hotels. John also has a distinguished background in public and community service, including serving 2 terms as mayor of Plano, Texas. John is an expert in hotel development, marketing, and industry relations. As CEO of PRLA, John's representation of AAHOA members has been exemplary. In fact, one of our favorite stories about John and PRLA is when legislators told us that he was the chief reason the state would not raise taxes against hotels in order to pay for budget shortfalls and unrelated projects. We're proud to have our partnership and grateful for John's leadership. Welcome to each one of you. It should be an engaging conversation. Stuff like this is not a hot and sexy subject, but I think the fact that we've got such positive people here and such engaging people, it should be an interesting and fun webinar here. Now, I'd like to kind of, if you guys can share how you guys have dealt with the COVID-19 in your state and how it's impacted your state and our lodging industry. Carol, I know you've got the most engaging industry in Florida, so if you can start off for us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. We're always excited to participate in anything with AAHOA. You've been such great partners with us. It's been obviously a very challenging time since March. We went through the total shutdown. Then during that time in our industry, the hospitality and tourism industry is the economic engine of Florida. We do 25% of the state's entire budget. So of our 1.5 million employees, over 937,000 of them were furloughed and laid off during that time. So clearly, it's been a challenge. If you fast forward to today, our state has lost about 2.1 billion, and that's billion with a B, in our state revenue since COVID hit. Now, granted, some of our employees have gone back to work, but we're still way down, since areas like Miami or Dade County, Broward, and Palm Beach are still in a moderated shutdown version, if you will. Our numbers peaked, unfortunately, the last couple of weeks, but I'm happy to report that as of today, they've come back down to, I think yesterday was even an all-time low. So, like you said, we're a resilient state, we're a resilient industry. We will recover. We just have to continue to keep trying to learn how to swim and navigate these waters that we've never been through before. So with our partnership, I know we can do that.
Yeah, Carol, thank you very much. Same thing in our state of Virginia. We've had a lot of negative impact on occupancy and rate in every way possible. So it's been a very challenging time. I'm assuming, John, in our neighboring state of Pennsylvania, what are you seeing up in Pennsylvania up there?
Well, Vinay, thank you first for having me on the panel today. I'm always thrilled to be involved with AAHOA in any way that I can, and appreciate the good work that you do. Our crisis started the same day as everyone else's did nationwide, except in our case, the governor totally closed hotels. And there was a 4-hour, very tense time where hotels thought they were going to have to evict guests, and they didn't really know how to react. It took us about 4 hours to get the hotels deemed as essential businesses, so that they could stay open. And once that was resolved, we then hit the crisis that everyone else hit. Carol talked about dollar numbers. I'll talk a bit about occupancy. In our trough, which was mid-April, we hit a trough of about 17% occupancy statewide. And while it certainly isn't going to sustain the industry, I'm happy to say that as of the week ending July 20th, we're back up to about 42% statewide, but that's compared with last year's same period, which was 78%. So while we have some optimism there, it's not a lot of optimism. Pennsylvania is also very blessed to be located where it is in one of the largest population centers in the country, with the New York metropolitan area. So we've seen a very quick resurgence in the Poconos and the Lehigh Valley, and they're running in the 60% occupancy, which is against about 80% they ran last year. So there is a lot of staycations. There's a lot of drive time travel. Pennsylvania will be the beneficiary of a lot of that. Not surprisingly, the cities are hardest hit. Pittsburgh is the lowest of all of the occupancies in the state right now. Philadelphia, which is still not fully open for even for indoor dining, is also struggling. But the countryside is doing better than some might expect.
Thank you. I've visited Pennsylvania and drove this. I'm assuming the drive-to market to some of the destinations have been really well there. Michael, how about in Illinois? I know that it's a tough market up there, especially with the summer. It's a beautiful area, actually, as a matter of fact, during the summertime. I know I've always wanted to go down to Chicago and the Illinois area. So what are you guys seeing in terms of impact from COVID-19 for the hoteliers industry out there?
Well, let me start by also thank AAHOA for the great partnership that we've had over the last several years, but particularly the last several months. I think it's important that especially lawmakers realize that it's not necessarily just the major REITs that we're talking about. It's individual owners based right here in Illinois, and these are their livelihoods. So I think the partnership between IHLA and AAHOA couldn't be any more important than it is right now. So thanks for inviting me to be part of this. But Vinay, you nailed it, that the Chicago and the rest of the state depends on the summer tourism season. That's what carries our year-round occupancy. We wish we had the same weather as Carol does in Florida, but we're unfortunately not in that same boat. And it's just been devastating. And I think particularly when you look at the group travel market, that makes up 50% of the total revenue for particularly our Chicagoland hotels, but then obviously there's carryover into the rest of the state as well. So in the early reopening phases here in Illinois, we had a fairly strict limit on indoor gatherings of 50 people. And originally we were one of the lowest states in terms of capacity for indoor events. Now, as other states have retreated their reopening plans, Illinois is actually one of the larger allowed event sizes. We are fearful, like many states, Illinois is seeing an uptick in cases, and that's what we're closely monitoring to see if that impacts those event limitations. That will just be another blow to the industry. But like every other state, we are seeing the drive markets and particularly the select service and limited service hotels definitely fare better than the full service meeting focused hotels. And I think you'll see that continue to keep pace as we see the recovery. You're seeing some of the drive markets with more limited service presence rebound into the 50 to 60% range in terms of occupancy, whereas in downtown Chicago, we're still under 20%. So I think a lot of the trends that you're seeing nationally are replicated right here in Illinois.
Yeah. Now let's switch over to more specific things. And, me as a hotelier, we face a lot of different things, especially here we are in August here, and you've got a lot of issues such as property taxes or labor needs or exposure to liability. What are some of the most urgent concerns for hoteliers in your states? And so, Michael, if you can help us with that.
Yeah, I think the top two here, really top three. First on the group sizes, as I mentioned already, trying to, as things hopefully improve through the course of 2020 and into 2021, easing some of those restrictions. The next would be property taxes. I think there's the desire of many for full tax forgiveness in terms of property taxes. I think we all agree that that's just not realistic, particularly in a state like Illinois that was broke even before COVID. They're certainly not in a position to do full tax forgiveness. So we focused on a lot of things like tax deferrals and stretching out the payment schedule to provide operating capital in the short term for our hotel owners. But also in terms of the valuations of the properties themselves. We're going through a reassessment process in many areas of Illinois, how hotel owners can leverage the lower valuations of their businesses right now to try to have lasting implications for the property tax benefits, to try to lower their lasting property tax. And the last one I would mention is around labor. Obviously, Chicago has historically been a hotbed for labor movements. We're closely monitoring some of the other markets throughout the country, including in California, Arizona, even Alaska, where you usually don't see labor activity. They're seeing it now. So we're closely monitoring. If some of these proposals move forward, I think it will not just prolong the recovery, but it will convince some hotel owners that are still shut down right now simply just to not reopen if they're going to have to absorb hundreds of thousands of dollars in new costs related to some of these labor proposals.
Yeah. How about in Florida, Carol? I know that there's a lot of hotels, a lot of tourism, and it's a year-round business there. So what are some of the issues that you guys are facing down in Florida?
Well, just like Michael said, I think all of us probably share in some of the same issues of property taxes. Liability is going to be huge. We've drafted legislation, but our legislature doesn't go in until next spring. So we are hoping to get some federal relief, but getting some protection for our hotel and our restaurant members is critical. Another thing for Florida that's killing us is the convention business. I mean, we're a huge international travel state, convention state. Just as an example, Orlando alone, just Orlando for the month of June or July, air travel was down 80%. So, I know I went down there in the convention center, it was like a ghost town. So obviously all of those conventions bring hotel business. Then on top of that, we're a huge cruise line state. Our eastern part of our state, South Florida, we have all of our cruise ports, and they've been shut down until November. So all of the hotel occupancies that come to us by virtue of the cruises are shut down. So we have a lot of work to do to begin to get things opened back up again. But again, like I said, we will see this pass. It's just going to be a while yet. And our legislature is going to have a lot of tax issues to address to try to give tax incentives, tax breaks, to help keep these businesses, get them on their feet, because PPP, though we're expecting phase 4, it's been wonderful. We can't plan to live off of that forever. So we have to get this state and our entire country propped back up. So we all share
John,
some
how about
of the
in
same issues.
Right. Hey, John, how about in Pennsylvania?
Well, Vinay, our issues are very similar to those that have been described with Michael, perhaps not with as much issue around labor, but I'll echo what Carol said about liability as well. Liability is a tremendous issue, and it has to be dealt with both at the state and federal level. We're fortunate that we have legislation moving in Pennsylvania in the State House, and it will also require some federal work as well. And let me also say that our hotel owners, first and foremost, are saying, just allow us to do business again in a safe fashion. Yes, we need some relief and recovery, but all we really want to do is get open. So like Carol and Michael, I'll say that getting capacities increased for group business is going to be number one. We were making great progress on that in Pennsylvania with Governor Wolf, and then the uptick happened mostly in the southern states, and everybody got very concerned about upticks throughout the United States. So we actually opened with a 250 capacity indoor with social distancing and all those sort of things, and that's now down to 25. So the number one thing our hotel folks say is they've got to get those capacities back up for the group business that wants to come back into the hotels, groups and convention business. So those are, aside from that, all of the other things I agree with Carol and Michael entirely.
One of the things in Virginia that has helped us out is the relationship we have with our state legislatures. And that's probably one of the most critical things that from a state association you can have. And I think from a valuation for a hotel owner, the relationship that we have with our state legislatures is absolutely critical. So how do you advise these state legislatures on the crisis that we're having, and how critical is that relationship to all of our members here? John, if you can start that one off.
Yeah, the relationship couldn't be more important. And we ascertained very early on that while we may have disagreed with some of Governor Wolf's orders, there was not going to be a legislative fix for it, and there was not going to be a judicial fix. The courts upheld the fact that the governor has the total authority to manage through this crisis, and any legislature that might have reduced that at all would be vetoed and it would not be overridden. So we quickly developed a strong relationship with Governor Wolf and his team as the so-called subject matter experts to help with reopening standards, both in the yellow phase, which was our first phase of reopening, and then in the green phase. That's been instrumental throughout this. And as an example, getting hotels quickly reopened when they were closed at the very first stage. We also have worked very closely with the legislature, and particularly in our case, because we have a Democrat governor and a strongly Republican legislature, we have a lot of friends on the Democratic side of the aisle that are helping us to convince the governor of certain things that we think are important in the safe operation of hotels and restaurants. So the relationship has been really important, but it was important to understand early on that the governor held all the cards, and we had to have a relationship with the governor in order to make this work. We were one of the only associations that he embraced, probably because of the complexity of the restaurant and hotel business, in order to help to develop standards that could safely reopen Pennsylvania.
Yeah. How about in Illinois, Michael? How are you working with the legislatures?
Well, in Illinois, a lot of people joked when our Governor Pritzker, was first elected of, oh, it's great to have a hotelier as governor, given his connections with the Hyatt. company. But as we've seen in the White House, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to necessarily help out the lodging and tourism industry. And we've definitely seen that here in Illinois. But I will say we have a Democrat in the governor's office, and then we have a supermajority of Democrats in both the House and Senate. So it's really what the Democrats kind of want to push forward is what they're going to get. I will say we've been lucky and we already had a strong relationship with every level of government here, and we've been brought into the conversation very early, both in terms of the original stay-at-home order. Hotels were always allowed to stay open, and then also during the reopening process, IHLA actually was made responsible to put together a task force to actually write the reopening guidelines so that it really took into our account our operational concerns and some of the new safety protocols that the industry has embraced nationally. I will say this, similar to John, we've heard from a lot of our owners and a lot of our operators, why aren't we suing the state? Why aren't we suing the governor to reopen quicker and allow larger group sizes? And just to echo John's point, it's not going to succeed. There's been 5 lawsuits already on group sizes here in Illinois, 0 of which succeeded. They've all been struck down. And so just to recreate the wheel to try to pound our chest and make ourselves feel good about ourselves isn't the right strategy, especially considering that for a minimum of the next 2 years, probably longer, we're going to continue working with this governor. So I think our industry, as frustrating as it is, I know people's livelihoods are at stake. We need to keep in mind the long-term strategy around this and to continue developing those long-term relationships. Otherwise, our industry is just going to be put on the back burner as some of the other industries have already seen.
Michael, I agree with you. It's not easy. Everybody wants to roll their sleeves up and start fighting, and I think you got to be smart and be strategic in how you manage these things here. Carol, how about in Florida? How do you guys deal with the legislatures, and how do you communicate our issues and crisis that we're in right now?
Well, one of the things that I think all of my colleagues and myself have realized is that for once, and there's no question the value of the trade associations. I think all of us have been on the front line fighting for the hospitality and tourism industry since the beginning of this. FRLA was very fortunate. We had a great relationship with the governor prior to this happening, so we were brought to the table immediately. Not only is it the governor, but all of his appointees in his cabinet that are so significant. Secretary Halsey Beshears is our regulator. I literally talked to them, 3-4 times a week. In the beginning, it was almost every day. And we have they've made the communication so much easier. I cannot say enough about Governor Ron DeSantis, because he has called me on a regular basis. He has checked in weekly to see how our members are doing. And he's been probably one of the biggest communicators for us, because as he goes out into the public and out traveling, he has been advocating on behalf. He has fought hard. He's under a lot of pressure right now to shut down the state again because the numbers increased. And as you can imagine, we have quite the opposite of Michael, very conservative Republican governor, and a House and Senate that are both Republican. So the fight has been from the other side, I think, a lot of pressure to shut down. And this governor is incredibly business friendly and does not want to do that, and has shared with me along the way how hard he's going to continue to fight. So I believe that, like I said, we had a good relationship before. We have an even better relationship, ironically, as a result of a tragedy. But I just can't thank the governor and his administration and the legislature, because they've checked in with us regularly. We keep them all on a mailing list and an email blast, so that we keep every member of the legislature, governor, cabinet, regardless of party, up to speed on what we're doing. So it's communication's the key, and we have not had a lack of that here in Florida.
Yeah, that relationship is absolutely critical here, and so in the industry as a whole, travel has changed a lot. I mean, I remember still after September 11, travel changed. And how do you envision the state of travel in your state, given, if you look ahead, how do you envision the changes that's going to occur to travel within your states here? I'll start with Carol, sorry.
It's going to be very interesting. Like I said, with airline traffic down, convention business down, cruise lines down, our state's relying heavily on drive-in traffic. Something new that we've never done before, our Visit Florida, which is our state marketing organization, has always marketed outside of Florida, abroad, international. And then we at FRLA have done more in-state marketing. We've entirely flipped over our marketing strategy, and we're doing predominantly in-state marketing and asking Floridians. We are a large state. We are asking them, don't travel outside of Florida. Sorry to my other colleagues, but to spend your money here in state. We have 850 miles of the most beautiful beaches in the world. So we're really trying to encourage them to stay in Florida. Attractions are huge here, as you can imagine, with Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, and many, many other attractions. They're open on a limited basis, but just the fact that the door cracked open and they're starting to get customers again, but they're all doing these amazing packages for Florida-based families. So we just have to rethink. We have to rethink the way we sell ourselves, the way we make our customers feel comfortable. And I'll close with this. FRLA started our Seal of Commitment program because we've been challenged from the beginning. How are you going to make the consumer feel good about coming back again? So we have a Seal of Commitment program. It's a very extensive training. It goes into what we have mandated by Florida and has been mandated for decades, added COVID training, and you get a seal. And this gold seal of approval you can use in your marketing, your social media, on your door, and it's been amazing. Our phones have been ringing. People want to get through this so they can prove to the consumer that it is safe to come back to our hotels and back to our restaurants. So it's going to be a new day, but we're all going to figure out a way to make it happen. So
Exactly. John, how about in Pennsylvania? What are you guys seeing?
Well, like Carol, we're also focusing on getting people in Pennsylvania to stay in Pennsylvania. In fact, PRLA also represents travel and tourism in the state, and we're working with the state tourism office on a campaign that is largely focused at Pennsylvanians staying in Pennsylvania. As I mentioned earlier, we're very fortunate to be near the New York metro area, Washington, D.C., and we have a huge opportunity for drive-in leisure travel for Pennsylvania. So we're seeing a lot of that, as I mentioned earlier, in places like the Poconos and the Lehigh Valley. The challenge is going to be group business and how our group-based hotels are going to replace that business. Those of us that were in the hotel business after the tragedy of September 11th, and most of the people in the audience probably were, remember that we thought the group business would never be back. It took about 2 years to get it back. I think that it's not going to be back the way that we are used to because the ability to teleconference is so much better today than it was 20 years ago that we're going to be losing that business. So our challenge in the industry is going to be replacing group business, figuring out where that comes from.
Anything else, Michael, in Illinois?
Yeah, I think even just operationally, I think a lot of our hotels are already talking about how we can do more with less. And I think that goes to speak towards the importance of, again, trade associations, where a lot of hotels, especially our larger hotels, used to bring in consultants, used to bring in different contract different people for different sales and marketing strategies. Some even hired lobbyists to do their own lobbying for them at the city and state level. I think now without those resources and a sales department that used to be 5, now down to 1 or 2, there's going to be even more reliance on associations and organizations like AAHOA and like the state hotel associations to provide and fill that void.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, like I said, even for me, looking at travel abroad and how if I'm going to travel in December, going outside the country, even for us, we're staying local. And so one of the good things for us, as in the USA, is that we're blessed to have everything. With coast to mountains to beaches to mountain, everything you want, everything you don't have to travel abroad. So I think that looking ahead, the travel trend will be to stay local and stay in the USA in terms of travel there. In closing, can you share with our members the critical importance of this of associations? now more than ever, and you thought about the 2020 election cycle, how is that going to impact us in the industry as a whole? John?
Well, I'll start with the association. We've always thought of associations as being the advocates for the industry, which we certainly are. And that would mean that we're handling legislative advocacy. This happened on steroids after all of this this crisis hit, such as I described, keeping hotels open to start with, getting outdoor dining in yellow, getting drinks to go, making sure that there weren't unrealistic standards in keeping hotels safe. All of the legislative advocacy became really important, getting aid for hotels and restaurants. But the other thing that came out really big and came out really strong about associations is we were the trusted information source, not only for our industry, but for many industries that followed our daily updates because they couldn't decipher the different orders that were coming out. They didn't know where to go for resources. So I think that the other side of the association that is really important is, besides being a federation of hotels and restaurants, it makes us all that much more effective in Harrisburg or Washington. We also are the ones that can provide information, and knowledge is absolutely critical to running a business, particularly in times like this.
Michael, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the role of associations just in general is to do for your members what they can't do for themselves. And I think if we have individual hotel owners going to writing the governor's office or making phone calls, it won't have nearly as much influence as us speaking in one voice to the governor's office. So I think that's exactly the role of associations, and it's more important than ever before. And I think if we start becoming disjointed or seeing members kind of drop out of this network, I think it will not only do that individual hotel harm, but it will do our industry harm. So I think we need to continue speaking with one voice, continue staying involved in our associations, and serve as that trusted source, as John mentioned.
Yeah. Carol?
Well, one of the things that I hope that the industry will recognize is that without all of the trade associations, and I mean from AAHOA to AHLA to NRA, National Restaurant Association, to all of the state hotel and restaurant associations, there's no telling the chaos that would have happened without our trusted source of voices collectively working. We all worked together. We worked nationally to get relief for the industry. Sometimes people just think that it just happened. Well, I can promise you that none of it just happened. The PPP, the exemptions we got, the tax relief we're working on, the liability protection, all of the things that have happened, will happen, and we're looking forward to working on are happening as a result of your trade associations. In Florida, one of the most significant things that's coming up in November, you mentioned the election. This is probably one of the most critical elections, most nationally and state, that we've ever seen, is Amendment 2. Amendment 2 in Florida is the amendment that will raise our minimum wage to $15 an hour. And I stay on calls every day. I have members, first of all, that are already telling me they can't keep their doors open. If payroll increases 75 to 78%, you can guarantee that thousands and thousands of establishments will say it's the last nail in the coffin. We're done. We're turning over the keys and we're closing the doors. We cannot let that happen. We have got to defeat Amendment 2. So right now, that on top of COVID and hurricanes and all of the other things that we as trade associations get to deal with, getting first responders and hotel rooms and getting them food and all the things that we do, if you pulled the plug on your trade associations and we did not exist, I can't even imagine what it would look like. So again, we're going to continue to fight the fight and fight a good fight. So, and I want to also close by saying how much I appreciate all of my colleagues, including our colleagues here at AAHOA, that you all have been there with us, giving us advice, helping us navigate and negotiate through things that were important to you. So your voice is very important to all of us. And I just want to say thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, and I agree with everybody here that now more than ever, the associations and how we can work together to fight this crisis and the issues that is dealt with is very, very critical. Associations play a very key role in helping keeping our members informed of what's going on and prepared to take on what's next. And so at AAHOA, we prioritize education, industry advocacy to ensure that our members are well equipped to address this crisis here. So collectively, we're stronger, and this is the most critical time to lean on our state associations, our national associations to help us carry through all this crisis here. So I thank you very much for your time and your expertise today. We're grateful for your partnership with each of you and truly appreciate your leadership, especially when our industry needs it the most. So looking forward to seeing you, everybody or anybody, at a AAHOA event, hopefully soon. And I hope to see everybody here soon. Thank you.
We've heard from several great speakers about what it will take to get our industry on the road to recovery. We face a challenging road ahead, but this crisis will pass and people will travel again. We are grateful for their participation and for the knowledge and perspectives they have shared throughout the afternoon. Tomorrow, we will announce the winners of the AAHOA elections. We'll also be hearing from industry legend Horst Schulze, interviewed by Mitch Shaw, a panel of some of AAHOA's most seasoned members, a speaker addressing law and liability in the age of coronavirus, and I'll interview OYO's founder and CEO, Ritesh Agarwal. And don't miss the final day of our trade show. Thank you, and we will see you tomorrow.